Go
All
on,
right,
Sean.
good evening, everybody, and welcome to Top Deck Heroes with Rochester CCG. I'm the host. I'm Sean O'Brien. I own the company, so I get to be in charge. We have Kevin Broberg, the second person to Grand Slam in UFS. He'll be one of our hosts. And our final host is Matt Hughes. You may recognize him from the possibly less as good show, Total Justice Gaming. Just kidding. I love those guys a lot. Everybody say hi.
Hey, folks.
Hey, Internet.
So we're going to be doing this show every Wednesday night going forward, starting right around 8 o'clock. Basically, what we want to do with this show is focus a little more on the competitive gamers, talk about current events in UFS, and stuff that's going on. Since it's our first time, we'll talk a little bit about ourselves, how long we've been playing UFS, and why our opinions matter. We'll start with Kevin Broberg.
All right, so I started playing with Street Fighter: The Dark Path, which I think is about 8 years ago now, which is kind of unreal. I kind of played despite not having very many cards for a long time. In an absolute sense, like throughout the whole Blood Run Street Edison Syndicate, I didn't have any of those good, any of the tier 1 cards. But since about around when Red Horizon started, I merged my collection with Sean O'Brien's, and we kind of have been going strong ever since with that. Basically, I've had every card to be able to play with. I've phone call. I've been. I started kind of building the Slice Cake stack. Was the first like really successful deck I ever had, and ever since then I've been kind of one of those players who can remotely try to win things sometimes. And I've managed to piece together one of each champ card in the 4 formats, which are champ cards now. It's been pretty great for me.
All right, Hughes, go ahead and talk a little bit.
Oh man, my audio's getting out.
All right, I'm Matt Hughes. If we got anyone from Total Justice Gaming over here, you should know about me at this point. I co-host on that show. I've been playing longer than these two, but unfortunately don't have cardboard yet because I'm lazy. I've been playing since the very beginning of the game. I got in with Penny Arcade and been loving the game ever since and been through it, through all of its pains. Plan is to come get cardboard this year since I'll be finally going to my second major event. Sean, how about you?
Well, I've been playing UFS almost as long as Matt Hughes. I probably started a couple months after he did, way back in the end of 2006. I've been playing since the first Soul Calibur set. I really love UFS. It's been great. I've met a lot of great people playing it. I just won my second champ card at U.S. Nationals in 2015 with Ryan Field and Jeffrey Kahn. It was pretty awesome. Before that, you may recognize my fat face from Millennium Games and Hobbies, the most unplayable champ card that was ever printed. Except for, I'm sorry, I did forget about Kirk.
Our card is fantastic. Shut up.
Kevin wins with it all the time.
Pacific Gifts is much more unplayable.
It's because it's not legal.
I agree.
I also run Rochester CCG. You guys probably have all met me throughout my travels running the singles store. We also have a distribution network where we try to get more stores picking up UFS because I think it's really important to get UFS played in as many places as possible. It makes me money and it makes everybody else happy.
Yeah, having 20-player Pro Tours where like 2/3 of the field has a champ card, those are great, but I'd much rather have a 50-player tournament where no one has a card than it's the same people who've been playing the team for 10 years coming back and beating each other up. So the dream of Rochester CCG is to spread the game to more people, and that's what we're really trying to do here is try to make it a little bit more accessible to that top level of play.
We want to be Star City Games Mark II, right?
Oh, those guys ain't got nothing on us. So our first real topic of discussion tonight is I want to talk about the Atlanta Pro Tour that happened last weekend. Unfortunately, I was not able to make it because I'm poor and don't have a ton of vacation time. However, Kevin is our resident millionaire and he travels to every event. And so,
except for Scotts Valley Pro Tour because that is too far away and
also conflicts with another event.
It does?
Isn't that this weekend?
No,
conflicts with our
yeah.
Conflicts with our pre-release.
It does conflict with our pre-release. So, Kevin, you were at the event. Tell us a little bit about how UFS was like down in Atlanta.
So the clear tail of the tape, so to speak, is the Calgary team of Devin and Garrett coming down and crashing their moms into Atlanta, playing the all-symbol wall deck using Master Magnetism plus attacks that can only be blocked by off-zone blocks to create effectively unblockable attacks and pushing through lethal damage that way. That's clearly like the deck of the event, because not only did the winner play the Andy version, but Garrett also played the sandbagging Terry version, which was actually really, I mean, almost a completely different deck in some ways, because the attack lineup was completely ridiculous and all over the place, just like Garrett likes it. But both decks were absolutely headlined by 4 copies of Mourning the Lost, and although they're actually, relatively speaking, were fewer copies than I think a lot of people expected in the top 8. The top 8 was actually much more kind of original than I think a lot of people would expect, because going into the event, Shiranui Namai and Trinity Geyser were 2 really huge cards that people expected a lot of. And they actually, neither of them put any copies in top 8. But yeah, I think the deck of the event was definitely the all-wall deck. I played a Death Psyche deck that was a lot of fun and really incredibly dynamic and crazy deck. But I actually got paired with both Garrett and Devin and lost pretty convincingly to each of them. I managed to pull a game off of Devin, then lose the other 2 in 15 minutes. That's pretty rough. There were 5 copies each of both Skullman and Gemini Man, which are 2 really powerful kind of aggressive decks in their own ways that also aren't single-minded or one-dimensional about it and have a lot of staying power in their own ways. Gemini Man adds a lot of speed with his attacks and scales up into the long games, and can also defend himself really well with the character blocks and Ophidiophobia, whereas Skullman obviously can just see pretty much his entire deck on some turns. There were several really competitive builds of him in the event, and ultimately our Swiss champ went 5-1, kind of riding the loser bracket a little bit, but playing very strong players even with 1 loss, and wound up as the only 5-1 player at the end of the event, playing actually a Chaos Skullman, which was broadly considered to be his worst symbol because it doesn't have Mourning the Lost.
Yeah.
So I think the deck we want to talk about tonight is Andy.
Yes.
For those of you who aren't familiar with the character card, and he'll be coming up on the feed here in just a second, Andy is a 6/27, 6-hand size, 27 vitality, with all earth and good. First ability, Archimate, pitch the first card in your opponent's card pool. After your opponent plays an attack, not as a block, reduce that attack's damage to 1. And then E, discard a card from your opponent's card pool. Draw a card, this attack gets plus X speed, X equals the number of cards discarded from your opponent's card pool this combat phase. Only playable during your attack. Now, I've seen a few people play Andy with different levels of success. I've seen him played as a control character that just kicks any attack out of the card pool that they don't want to deal with. I've seen Kevin play him fairly aggressively.
That deck was stupid.
But it looks like this week, three of the major players in the Andy decks were Mourning the Lost, which, if you know anything about UFS or have people who play UFS competitively near you, you're pretty familiar with that card. The 1/4, after you play it, draw a card, and then you can blow it up for +1 damage for each 5 cards in your opponent's discard pile. And the other card that pairs really well with it is Master of Magnetism. It's a foundation that gives your high attacks +1 damage, but more importantly for this deck, it returns an attack to printed zone, and your opponent cannot attempt a partial block.
And so that ability to prevent partial blocks is basically the combo of the deck, is that you combine that with either Andy's ultra rare attack from the first set, People's Elbow, or there's a bunch of different names for it, but Shoshin Soku Zanai Ken, which lets you discard momentum to say that your opponent may not play mid attacks to block it at all.
May not play mid blocks.
Yeah, mid block. I said mid attacks, didn't I? Yeah. So they can't, basically, between that ability and Master of Magnetism, if they both go through, your opponent simply cannot play any blocks, and they're guaranteed to take, 7 damage to start with, but often a whole lot more.
Yeah, so what that does is They can't block, and they're going to take at least 7 damage if they have no way to reduce the damage. And then if you get into a late game scenario where your opponent's running Mourning the Lost, it can make unblockable moves for your life total. And all in general, I think, is very good at setting up those scenarios because they got a lot of really good defensive pieces. They've got ways to disrupt your opponent with Templar. Unexpectedly, I think people didn't respect Born in the USA until this weekend because having to deal with a reversal Shoryudan on your turn is pretty miserable because they're going to jam your card pool. You got to block an attack with a multiple keyword, or you're going to take some damage.
It's a pretty savage
Yeah, and
reversal.
actually, Shoryudan reversals are filthy. They're really, really good. And the deck also plays, the list just went up recently, so I don't know if we've all seen these yet, but it plays a single copy of Kuga Yuri Chow Upper, which can commit any card in your opponent's staging area unconditionally, and it can be played off of a Born in the USA. One of the other important features of Born in the USA is that it has a relatively powerful damage pump. It adds +3 damage for only a commit cost, but it's only playable on your first attack of the turn. That means is that anytime you play a reversal or you play an unblockable attack, those are going to be your first attacks of the turn. So it's a very efficient damage bonus in that way.
So now, one of the things I want to talk with you guys a little bit about tonight is the elephant in the room, Mourning the Lost. If anybody's been watching the forums, been on the Facebook groups lately, certain people from the North Country have some issues with this card. And the card is, I think, extremely efficient. I mean, any foundation that turns into a new card, that just seems very, very powerful. Because early game, you're very happy to draw into 1 or 2 of those on your first turn, or in your first couple of turns, and just get more cards in your hand to get behind that wall. And then basically you're making an investment for later because then you're going to do 1,000,000 damage.
Well, so imagine every card in your hand has 1 difficulty, right? And you're a 6 hand size. So you can play 5 cards without, if you check straight 5s, you can play 5 cards in your hand, but then you only have 1 card left to block with. With Mourning the Lost, you can play 5 cards, the same 5 cards, but now you have 2 blocks, which means that it's much easier to hold on to a Templar because now you have an extra draw there to kind of have some leeway. You can hold on to attacks. You can build those 5 cards and still be resistant to a copy of the Year 2000X or Silent Assassin. You can play those 5 cards, and now your opponent can play 2 attacks, and you can just block both of them because they're not trying very hard to push them through because it's turn 2. And you can just keep you can just keep safer in a much better way. And also you can just draw an extra card, and maybe it's the 4th foundation because half your hand is attacks, and now you can actually get a reasonable build out of what would be a pretty crappy hand. I think it's hard to overstate how good the ability to draw an extra card is during your build turn. I think it's hard to just judge it just from looking at it because it allows you to build your deck. It allows you to just have so much more consistency with finding whatever you're needing to.
Hughes, what are your thoughts on the card?
I initially overlooked the card, mainly because for the longest time, I had what some people say, where some people were saying it's like, oh, just play around it, you'll be fine. And I did that because I've learned to deal with overpowered cards. I've dealt with Piercing Howl, I've dealt with Yogan Mastery, Ring Veteran, VRT, etc. All these broken cards. So to me, this card just didn't seem as insane. But now more and more I look at it, and now that rotation has happened, this is the clear front runner, I think, for the most powerful card in in the power vacuum that rotation created. And people will
Right,
say,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I just like
Okay, yeah, before rotation, we had cards like Divine Tribulation and Chasm Buster that didn't share any simple. Divine Tribulation shared more death with the card, but you had these really powerful ways to put a game away that didn't necessarily correspond. That both, like Mourning the Lost, drawing you an extra +3 off zone block, wasn't necessarily going to let you just save your life. It wasn't necessarily going to give you a big advantage because you're still getting. If I get a good draw with my Divine Tribulation deck, I'm going to run you over, and you better come for me to stop me before that happens. In post rotation, the offenses of most decks have just gotten a lot. Well, no, they have gotten a lot weaker. it's much less devastating to just kind of have a middling turn and not have the right answers up.
Mm-hmm.
I feel there are a
and
few
warning loss.
exceptions. Like there are some really aggressive decks I think
Oh,
out there
I'm
still.
not saying that things are bad. It's just that things are less good.
No, things are different.
Yes.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot fewer divine tribulations, piercing. There are a lot fewer win buttons, and the way UFS has been designed lately, you're supposed to win by stringing a bunch of 4 difficulty moves together.
I think that's a much better way to frame it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not easy wins. It's not perfect draws equals unbeatable. And without those, Morning Lost is the best easy button we have left, because I remember there was a video some weeks ago before rotation, indeed, of a Hutzel deck. This was actually before Nationals. It was a Pro Tour Finals. A Hutzel deck played kind of recklessly and played out a bunch of attacks on turn 2, and then his opponent had 2 or 3 copies of Morning Lost in play, and pretty soon there was an unblockable speed attack coming down his face because he was tapped out and he had cards in his pool now for his life total because he just popped some Morning Losts. And that's still a valid play you have available today.
Mm-hmm.
Especially playing a 7 hand size against Andy's unblockables, that adds up to 10. You can add 10 damage to that thing real fast.
Yeah, you only take 17 damage so many times before you're just dead.
Quick.
Well, Psyche, my deck, I effectively only have 17 life because I usually like to pay life for his ability.
Quick segue here with this, as we're talking about aggression and trying to win and whatnot. We've gotten a couple of questions already from the Q&A section in the chat.
Bring them out.
People would like to know, I believe it's Dizzy Fist, who I don't know which actual player that is, because I don't go to the forums enough, but would like to think what we think are the most aggressive symbols right now in the game.
So I think water is a clear front runner for that. First of all, you have 2 extremely good characters in Gemini Man and Skull Man available. You have it's almost hard to overstate how powerful Shiranui no Mai is in the best case, where it draws you 4 or 7 or whatever cards, clears your entire card pool, and deals 7 damage. And then you also have a couple really key foundations: improved design, in a reactive style that generates some momentum. Improved design adds just a ton of damage to your attack turn, and you also have a couple abilities to string out a whole lot of attacks in one turn with Ice Slasher or Wing Slash, and improved design's response even.
That's interesting because I was actually going to say that I think Death might be the most aggressive symbol right now, and a lot of those same cards are available off of Death. Death feels really good when you can turn, especially with Mourning the Lost, you can string some Etten Cells and Minstrels together, and then
You're just thinking of Bomb Man.
Not just of Bomb Man. I mean, we've seen people have some success with Skull Man off of Death. I don't know. I'm waffling back and forth between Water and Death. They have a lot of the same tools. There's a lot of cards.
I think that. So I'm going to disagree with you there, because I think that one of the defining cards for Death is actually Hyper Bomb, and it doesn't have any powerful ways to combat progressive difficulty, like Water does with Shiranui no Mai or with any really good multiple attacks.
Mm-hmm.
So even with Etten Cells and Mistral, and I mean I think Nevos is one of the big cards for Death again, and it relies on having a whole lot of cards in your staging area and kind of outbuilding your opponent before it can really get to its best point, its most powerful level.
Yeah, but I feel like Death's a little more flexible than Water.
Absolutely.
You can choose to be aggressive with Death, but there are a lot of Death bills right now where you could, with the same deck, be aggressive if your opponent leaves themselves in a situation where they're kind of precarious with improved design. But if you want to force a long game, that's fine as well.
Improved design doesn't have Death.
I could have sworn it did.
It's Crash Man. Come on, Sean. These are your babies. How are you getting this wrong?
Well, it's like when you grow up in a big Irish family and, your grandma goes to yell at you and she calls you by someone else's name. They're like, oh, you know which one you are.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's not for nothing either that guess what 2 symbols are on Mourning the Lost next to all?
Yep.
Death and Water. I think one card I did forget to mention for Death was Powerful Assassin.
That is actually what just got brought up.
That's an extremely powerful card.
In the Q&A.
as far as offense goes, it's not terribly great on offense, but it is extremely good.
I mean, it can save your neck when you need your neck to be saved.
Yeah. I think actually one symbol that might be a little underrated as far as offense goes might be Order. I think that it's got a couple characters that offer it a lot of damage pumps, and then it's got, again, Hyper Bomb. It's got a couple other stun attacks. It's got access to. I guess I'm specifically just thinking of Pharaoh Man here, but it's got access to Rain Flush, which is another really powerful card. And then the question is, how do you pass these control checks? But
Mega Man plus Clark support, you can make any move gigantic with him.
Yeah,
he just has some card advantage issues, which I think will be helped out in the next set, because he could very easily double the damage of a move, and then that'll turn on all of BB Hood's stuff.
Really, I think that in the past, this has been a question. There's been a clear answer. For example, before rotation, you could have a Chasm Buster, Divine Tribulation deck with an Out of Your League and like all these other extremely powerful cards, and just say, "Here's my aggro deck. I'm gonna blow your face off." And it didn't. And it was really just the symbol that did it, and not so much the characters. But I think for a lot of things right now, in our current standard format, you really have to build around your character, and the cards aren't necessarily going to carry the deck and be really translatable to other decks as far as winning the game goes. I think cards like Powerful Assassin, Mourning the Lost, Cataclysmic Force, these can translate between decks, but the way you actually try to win the game and put that together kind of relies on your character to really give you a guiding sense of that. So it's hard to say. Go ahead.
Right now, you can rely on your character a lot more than you could 2 months ago, because you're not going to play Honest UFS and then get your character committed because, oops, you played its ability twice per turn.
Right. There are a couple ways to play reversals that commit your opponent's character, though, with Born in the USA Kuga or Powerful, or what's the name of the 3 difficulty Robert card? Joyfully Wealthy. If you play a reversal and it hits, your opponent doesn't block it, it commits their character.
Yeah, but those are honest and fair ways to commit your opponent's character on their turn. I mean, blocking with a
they're very fair. They're compared to When the Moon Comes Over the Mountain. Very fair cards. Yeah. Very, very fringe. Honestly, it's something you put in your deck if you have a specific thing you want to deal with by committing their character. You won't see it all the time.
I think another symbol it's locked down to one character, and this goes on to you decide how you win with your character. Chaos with Snake Man. I think that's still one of the most aggressive decks in the format.
And I mean, we saw a successful Earth Snake Man at the Atlanta Pro Tour. We saw.
You did.
It top-8'd, buddy.
I haven't gotten a look at the top 8. I was out of town. I'm gonna have to do that.
So it was an Earth Snake Man.
I'm gonna look at it right now.
Fair UFS, Power Waves, and it had Search Snake. It was a little multiple to try to close things out.
Nice.
Yeah, I think for anybody getting ready to build a deck right now, I think the first question you need to ask yourself before rotation was, how many champ cards do you have, and what symbol do they share? I think after rotation, you're in a better spot where you can actually ask yourself, what character do I want to play? What character do I like? And what character has an ability that seems exciting?
Or alternatively, what collection of cards kind of knit together to make something bigger than the sum of their parts? How can I play Etten Cells and make it actually be more than a 1 damage attack that loses me 2 life? Like, why do I want to lose 1 life on that exchange? How do I build that into something more? How do I build around Gemini Man and really make him the best he can be? Or how do I make Rain Flush work? How do I make Trinity Geyser work?
Trinity Geyser. Are there any other questions from the Q&A before we move on to our next topic?
Not seeing anything at the moment. We just had lots of comments back and forth about people talking about what we were saying, bringing up cards that you guys brought up.
Yeah, I saw Field call it Joyfully Wealthy 30 seconds after I finished figuring it out.
Yep.
Actually, I have one more thought on Andy
Mm-hmm.
that I'd like to share with you. So one of the features of the character is that he actually gives your opponent some control over what his ability does, because he can only discard the first card in their card pool for his response. So if you play, for example, I saw this in the finals match between him and Dave Wagner's Gemini Man deck. if you have an action card that is like neutral on cards, so like give up yet, discard a card, draw 2 cards, then you can play that as your first form and kind of blunt the effectiveness of Andy's ability. Because if he wants to reduce damage of your attack, it'll only go to he'll take a card that's just clogging your progressive difficulty anyway. Whereas if you lead off with an attack, he can actually abort or drop the attack, I think is our new term for it. He can actually discard it from your card pool, so it doesn't even get an enhanced step, and then you're just down an attack from your attack turn. So you have the ability to choose whether or not you'd rather just discard a card from your hand or play with +1 progressive difficulty until he decides to reduce your damage. And so there's this it's kind of a pick your poison sort of situation that can be really difficult to accurately judge if you haven't, put some thought and effort in to try to figure out which lines you want to take with what kind of hand.
Well, actually, I did forget one last point I had for the Andy deck discussion as well. And one thing I think we should leave our viewers thinking about, maybe till next week, till we discuss it a little more and see our comment box explode. And my question that I'd like to pose to both of you guys is decks that can make unblockable moves for infinity damage. Is that the kind of UFS do you think that we want to play, that you want to play, and that we should be able to play?
Yes, and yes, very easily.
No. No. This is my stance. I've said it in a couple of places on Facebook, which is the Andy deck in general, and going forward with UFS. I think playing a specific move, either Crash Slam or Andy's attack, and then having a specific foundation out, committing a foundation, discarding momentum, doing all these things to do a 7 to 10 damage unblockable move should be perfectly allowed. Making it 1 billion damage with Mourn the Lost? No. If my opponent commits that much just to do a 7 damage unblockable move, that should be allowed.
So how do you resolve that problem?
Get rid of Mourning the Lost?
Get rid of Mourning the Lost.
I continue to... So, I still think that it's easy to see how the game ends and how, I got wrecked by this 50 damage on blockable attack. What could I have done? But when it comes to Mourning the Lost, you lost the game when he put the second one in play on turn 2. And he was up 4 cards on you right then.
So do you think Mourning
an attack into him?
Do you think Mourning the Lost is a problem?
I mean, everyone who's built decks and played in this format at a competitive level, we know that it kind of chills the format. We saw the Elizabeth deck in New Orleans, and the builder of that deck said this mill out wall deck only exists because of the defensive draw ability of Mourning the Lost. And now we see the same thing where it's that defensive ability that prevents him from dying and buys him time to set up, winning another tournament, or actually winning a tournament this time. So instead of getting second place, he got the wall deck got first and fifth place.
Do you think we should ban it?
I think the game would be. I think I would rather have Mourning the Lost not exist than have it exist anymore. And I think I like to think that I'm a more conservative person with bans than most people, but I think that it's time for this one to go.
What do you think, Hughes?
Let it just... Where's the ban hammer? It's in your hands, right? There we go. My ban hammer is unfortunately...
Yeah, give me a like... Yeah. All right.
My ban hammer's missing.
Now, the other part of the combo, Master of Magnetism. Do you think that card has a place in UFS, or should we mourn that one as well?
I think Master of Magnetism is actually a really interesting card because it gives you a way to attack your opponent and to actually push an attack through without when you're kind of in a neutral board state where both players have a lot of cards in play, and so you're not going to be outspeeded them, and you're not going to have to discard their entire hand first. And I actually really like that component of the card. I think we've seen cards like this in the past, like Vincent Gray's support, where they can only block with a certain type of card that just no one played, no one liked because they were just so random, and half the time they wouldn't do anything because they didn't want to block with that kind of card anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I actually really like how it's just another angle on pushing an attack through. And I think that the power level with Crash Slam or with the People's Elbow isn't too devastatingly high without the biggest damage pump ever in the format, and also the slowdown from like the defensive velocity of the deck slows down because it doesn't get that extra card on build turns.
Mhm.
If it's going to build 5, it's taking a big risk. I think it's a cool card. I'd like to see it stay.
Yeah.
Basically.
I like the card. I agree with it. Like it feels like it's weird. I want to say it's an aggressive form of like Law of the Land. Like Law of the Land allowed you to just perfectly block everything. This is similar costs and allows you to try and get through with everything. And I like it. A lot of people, when the Mega Man first came out, were complaining that there was more Omni Block cards with like Leaf Shield coming out.
Yeah,
And
we had Leaf Shield all over the place here for the first couple weeks.
So it's an answer to Leaf Shield. Like if you just really don't want to deal with Leaf Shield, just play all highs or all lows and get out Master Magnetism. They can't block with that. They can't block with their Peaceful Messenger.
They can't block with their Templar.
Yeah.
That's another really good point. I was going to bring up Templar. It forces you to kind of it takes away a little bit the option to just play really lazy deck building and just play. Yeah, I'm going to play these Leaf Shields, these Templars, and just like don't care about what zone your attack is. And I really like that. That's another really positive factor to that card.
I know my thoughts on those two cards are, I mean, Mourning the Lost, I think kind of warps the meta a little bit. I think we're going to find until it goes, there are going to be people who are less experienced who are going to build their whole deck around stopping Mourning the Lost. And I think if they warp their entire deck building strategy of, oh man, I got to beat Mourning the Lost, they're going to lose more games than I think they would otherwise. And that's a problem with a format warping card.
Well, the thing with Mourning Lost is that, again, the strength of the card is maybe 50-50 between the two abilities, and there's nothing you can do to beat the draw a card ability.
No.
There's just nothing. You can't do it. You can try to say, I'm going to put Kim's Dobok in my deck, and say the damage pump's not going to matter anymore. But now you're playing a 2 difficulty asset that doesn't tap to pass control checks.
Mm-hmm.
When they played a 1 difficulty foundation, that's difficulty that replaced itself on that same turn, that's going to tap to pass control checks until they use it.
And there's no way to punish or stop Mourning the Lost. You know, you're not going to make people add cards to their card pool with Trained by the Streets, which is one of my favorite anti-draw cards right now because it's ridiculous.
That card's really rude.
You can't stop it with Caught Red-Handed. It just happens. So it's invincible, unpunishable card draw in this format. And then the damage pump to me is only about 30% of the card's ability. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are all decks that I run, and Kevin's going to call me a fish for this, but I would rather I commit Mourning the Lost to Master of Magnetism than other cards in my staging area because I'd rather protect myself. And that was +1 card to my staging area, +1 card to make my opponent have to block on low. So that's so much of the ability. And I think that's what makes the card so good. I mean, if there was a 2 difficulty asset that said after you play this card, draw a card with some other ability on it, I'd probably run it.
Who would make such a card?
Who would make such a card?
Kill yourself, Sean O'Brien.
I mean, it's.
Oh, that's awfully aggressive.
It's a champ card that I won that I'd like to get made, but who knows? People might have a different opinion after Mourning the Lost.
Mm-hmm.
It
didn't sink in until just now. That's why the aggression came in.
And then Master of Magnetism, you know, I kind of agree with what you said, Kevin, is it punishes lazy deck building. Because if I'm going to build a deck right now without thinking about Master of Magnetism, I'm going to be like, okay, how many Templar and Templar-like blocks can I throw into my deck? How many mid-zone breaker blocks can I put in, mitigate a good portion of the damage, and then not lose?
And you know, it's not for nothing that as far as Master of Magnetism goes, right now Cataclysmic Force exists. Cataclysmic Force, unlike Mourning the Lost, is a good answer to Master of Magnetism because it's 2 difficulty and it trades 1 for 1. So you're trading a 2 diff for a 3 diff. That's giving you a small advantage no matter how you cut it. Mm-hmm. And with Darkstalkers, we're going to see a character whose ability is turn target Master of Magnetism face down or whatever else they have in play.
Yep.
And so we won't be the unblockable deck is going to have to work so much harder to beat Dimitri than it works to have to beat anybody else.
The
Because
format's
you can always take one out.
The format's going to get shaken up pretty good again when Darkstalkers comes out. And it's very exciting because there's one major event between the Darkstalkers release and the World Championship.
And where is that, Sean O'Brien?
Why, that's going to be in Rochester at the Brighton Community Center. It's going to be the Rochester PTC. We weren't going to have one, but then we got one. Awesome.
And it was going to be extended, and now it's standard. So you don't have an excuse to not show up.
I'm glad it's not extended. Only like 4 people showed up for the World Championship.
Hey, hate.
But yes, that's going to be a fun time, I think. We got our own space, room for up to 100 players.
It's a really nice space right off the highway, and it's a really nice space. There's a ton of area outside if we want to like play ultimate frisbee or something between rounds. Oh, that's not going to happen, I know, but it's a dream.
So just like any PTC, the tickets are going to be, I believe, $20 in advance if you order through Jasco's site, $25 at the door. It's going to be the winner of the PTC is going to be getting a plane ticket, plus the share of the prize kit that Jasco sends out. And you guys all know it's a Rochester event, so there's going to be extra prize support on behalf of Rochester CCG. For those of you who play on the Empire Circuit, this is also an exciting event because after the PTC, there's the top 6 draft for the Empire Circuit. For those of you not familiar with the circuit, throughout the year you earn points for your placement at events. At the very end of the season, the top 6 players take part in a draft to determine who's going to win a plane ticket from Rochester CCG to go to either Gen Con or Las Vegas.
So it'll be a Mega Man draft event this time?
I'm pretty sure it's going to be a Darkstalkers draft event this time.
It's in July, of course. Yeah, right.
Days before.
So the doubly thrilling thing about this Pro Tour is that it's going to be we already talked about this, and I just forgot about it, didn't we? That it's going to be Darkstalkers is legal.
Yep.
One day after the street date.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And Rochester CCG does plan to have tons and tons of singles available to get what you need for the event.
And for the people who are on the state circuit, don't forget that this coming weekend, on the 20th, there's the 6th stage of the New York State Circuit in Buffalo.
It's our first stop out in Buffalo. It's at Collector's Inn on Delaware Avenue. They got a small play group going out there, and I think we want to go out and show some support. I know that Jason Moore has been busting his balls to get that group up and running. Hopefully they don't all flake out on us. Those of you traveling into Buffalo, I mean, we are offering space here in Rochester to stay the night because I know for folks downstate it's quite a haul. It's clear across New York, and contrary to what people think, New York is not just the city and then some mountains. There's also some waterfalls and a canal and some cows. We're still a small state. So exciting. I'm looking forward to that event. I like seeing everybody on the Empire Circuit. Play on the Empire Circuit is always pretty aggressive. We got a lot of top tier players. We got Kevin. Tim Keefe usually shows up for all the events. And I think it's only a matter of time before some of his boys down in Poughkeepsie start picking up their own cards. Amsterdam is a silent up-and-coming group.
Amsterdam has really impressed me with several decks. Like, they've put together some really good decks for playing for such a short time, and really, like, it's not like they're like a suburb of Michigan or anything like Slam, where he's playing with a ton of top players on his own all the time. It's like they just came up with their own decks, and they're actually really good.
But yeah, if you guys are anywhere near Buffalo this weekend, stop in, play. We like to have as many people show up for these events as possible. And then remember, the second weekend of July is our PTC. Rochester is not as far away as everybody thinks. We're only a couple hours from Toronto. It's about 5 hours down to Poughkeepsie. Philadelphia is about a 6-hour drive. Pittsburgh's a 6-hour drive. Folks could come up from Ohio, in the Columbus area, Louisville. It's only a 6 or 7 hour drive. Michigan, it's only a 7-hour drive. So it's not as far as people think. And as always, there's room for people to be put up, and we're going to have a grand time.
Everyone who's watching this, if you're friends with Tom Gordon, tell him to come to our Pro Tour. He can make the drive up from Columbus.
And that will
do it.
Hype.
We believe in him. It will be the most hype.
We can have Hype Man at the most hype event before Gen Con.
Following the PTC, the Empire Circuit takes a break for a while for the end of the season proceedings with the World Championship at Gen Con. I'm sure Jasco's going to be running. We'll have teams as always. There'll be a singles event. I'm sure they're going to continue to push Turbo. So, if you can come out to Gen Con, that's always a blast. We drink much alcohol, eat lots of great food, smoke cigars at Kilroy's on the patio. It's a great time for UFS.
I think of Kilroy's and I think of the, okay, kind of cramped, scenario where we're inside, and I forget about the amazing patio hangouts. We just take over that whole corner and just talk about UFS for, hours into the night. While drinking, $5 pitchers of Long Island iced tea or something.
Yeah, $5 32-ounce Long Islands. It's a good time.
Not to jump back too far, but something that someone posted that I missed. With Master of Magnetism legal, and us being okay with it, they should reprint Headstrong, which is the foundation. R, commit, discard a momentum. Before you attempt to block your opponent's attack, you may block their attack with any card, even if it would be an illegal block. Yeah?
I guess.
Okay.
it beats Master of Magnetism.
But wait, does that mean I can play a Templar in my not Ben Shoemaker?
Yeah,
my Skullman deck.
Block off chain. It would normally be illegal.
It's a good question.
Can I play any Yori's guitar in my mature deck and block with it? It's all I want is a low block with chaos that I can pick up with Mature's ability. Never mind.
That's why Jasco Games gave up Legacy, because it doesn't work with the rules.
Tim Keefe's job is already hard enough writing the AGR and errata lists for Standard.
And then the last event I want to talk about, it's a ways off, the second weekend of November, Rochester CCG's first 2K event. We've reserved a space for 144 people for 2 days at a park. So we'll have the space to ourselves. We'll be able to grill. There's going to be lots of food there. There's going to be beer, free beer.
Yeah. Sean O'Brien is providing a keg for all you chumps, so you can taste the sweetest Genesee River water you ever tasted.
Over $2,000 in prizes are going to be given out at this event. The winner of the 2K is going to walk away with $500 credit through the site. And everybody who makes top 8 is guaranteed, in addition to all the other swag they're going to pick up that weekend, a booster box. And the more people who show up, the bigger that prize purse is going to grow.
So what I'm hearing is the entire rest of the UFS community is going to be completely drunk, and I'm going to walk away with the money for all of top 8 because I'll be the only one not drinking.
Now, one thing you should know, Matt Hughes, is if Ben Shoemaker shows up and he gets drunk, he's going to win. I mean, that man plays UFS better drunk than he does sober.
Yeah, I forgot. He only gets more powerful. He is the UFS drunken fist master.
I played him round 1 at the Atlanta Pro Tour, and neither of us played very well. I'm sure if he was 12 shots deep at 8 in the morning, he would have ruined me.
I want Ben that to be his next card. Drunken Fistmaster, Ben Shoemaker.
Now, see, I want his card to be called 12 Shots In.
12 shots fired.
All right, so let's move on to our next segment of the program here, and that is the featured item. This week's featured item is a board game that just came out from Mirrorbox Games. It's called Chaosmos. Jasco Games is doing the fulfillment for this game. We had the opportunity a couple weekends ago to test the game out. It's basically a hidden information game where the universe is coming to an end, and you play alien races searching for an item called the Ovoid. If you possess the Ovoid when the universe ends, you get to create a new universe in your image, or not image, depending on if you hate yourself or not. My initial thoughts of the game, and I only had a chance to play the super basic game, is you got to pay attention quite a bit. So if you are ADD at all, or really can't keep track of what's going on, it's easy to lose track of what's going on in the game.
Well, so the thing about the game is that the rules aren't enormously complicated. So you fight your opponents by keeping a hand of hidden cards, and then maybe you get in a fight, but mostly you just explore the universe and fly to different planets and find out what's in their cache of stuff on the planet and trade resources with the planet. And then if you think someone else has a card you want, you can enter into a battle with them to try to steal it from them, and then you exchange kind of salvos of weapon fired with each other.
I had a lot of fun with the game because I had the fortune of, in one of the games I played, on like my second turn, stumbling upon the Ovoid. And I had a card in my hand that locked the planet out, unless you had a special key. So I locked the planet and just left without saying a word. And our poor friend Jeffrey Kahn, who we lovingly and affectionately call Giggles, happened to return to his home planet to find out that he had forgotten to check in his envelope for anything of interest, and that he could no longer get the game-winning Ovoid.
You put it on his home planet?
It was in his home planet!
That is like the story of Giggles, is that he gets enormously lucky and just like, yeah, I didn't look.
And the game, from what I've looked in the rules, has many different modes.
Yeah, it's a game with a lot of replay value despite being a board game, because it's a lot of games in one box. You can always change the rules. Modular. Yeah, it's incredibly modular. Yeah, modular is the big key, actually, that you can swap in different pieces.
And one of the things I was reading about that seems really cool is the game with the fake Ovoid in it.
Yeah, I have not gotten to play that yet. There's something called the Dark Ovoid.
So the Ovoid you get is not really the Ovoid, and you're not really going to win the game. And I mean, it's a lot of fun. You got to pay close attention to what your opponents are doing. How they're moving about. Are they exploring? Do they seem like they're being aggressive? And I don't know. I had a ton of fun with it.
Like, another thing, in addition to it with lots of replay value from it being modular, there's like 10 different races you can play, each with their own unique abilities that each give their own kind of strategy to win. And then interactions with cards that are in the decks give you even more different strategies on how to win. And if you're really good at bluffing, if you're a good poker player, you can really mess with people.
Which Giggles is not.
Yeah. He can be read like a book on tape.
Giggles is not good at poker. I'm not even gonna lie about how he just like draws straight flushes all the time. It's like he's just not good at poker.
So we do have Chaosmos available in the Rochester CCG store. Only 2 C's. It's $47. Comes with the full board game, many different modes to play, hours of fun with your friends, or hours of trolling your friends, depending on what you consider to be fun. And
and that's the most fun.
And if you have a brick and mortar store that's not currently carrying Chaosmos or any UFS product, please have them contact us. You can for stores in the U.S., have them contact Matt at mhughes@rochesterccg.com to contact your local store to get UFS in your building. Those of you north of the border, where the angry Garrett Brett lives, please contact Clint Badger, cbadger@rochesterccg.com. He'll hook your store up with some great deals, getting UFS product in. We still have a lot of product in stock available, even some of the older sets. So if your store can't get King of Fighters or Ruler of Time in, we've got it.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go
if you have a sales tip for Rochester CCG, you can just scroll down to the bottom of the page. There's a Contact Us page, and you can just fill in your name and email address and your message, and send that along, and we'll be sure to do it. We'll take care of your tip.
Just the tip.
Just the tip.
Just the tip. Also want to remind folks, we do have singles. We will have singles available soon for pre-order for Darkstalkers. We do have the Darkstalkers booster boxes, the starter decks, and the full pre-release kits, if you should be interested, available for pre-order on our site, rochesterccg.com. We are also...
So what comes in a pre-release kit?
So what comes in a pre-release kit? Lots of cool stuff. So in a pre-release kit, I believe I have it priced for individual players at $550. And for $550, you will receive 6 booster boxes rather, of Darkstalkers, a starter display, 4 J. Talbane playmats, 20 copies of the pre-release exclusive promo, plus a pack of 4X of each of the starting characters as the full art promos. So for $550, you're getting quite a bit of swag. I mean, if you've got a group that's got, 3 or 4 players, picking up one of those should give you a lot of stuff that you need for that set going forward. And if not, it'll definitely get you some good trade fodder.
Absolutely. Sounds like a good value.
And remember, we're always taking in your previously loved singles that, it's time to get rid of them, either because you want to get new cards or you just don't like a card anymore. Don't forget, we do take them in on our buy list, and folks who get store credit get 20% more every time they sell to our company. And also remember, last thing before I get off my little soapbox showboating thing here is just want everybody to know that we do offer for our repeat customers a discount program. The more you buy, the higher percentage off your orders you'll get, all the way up to a lifetime 10% discount on all orders from rochesterccg.com. If you have any questions about our store or any of our policies, don't hesitate to send us an email because we'd like to interest them, get those answered as soon as possible.
Okay.
So I think that wraps up everything we want to talk about tonight. Did we forget anything, Hughes?
I think that's about it. Unless anyone out there who's still watching has any questions for us. And actually, if we want some time to kill, people were talking in the beginning, or more or less just going whey about Jiffany Jamber, and she's a pretty big hot button topic.
She's a controversial topic in the UFS community.
Ooh. I would say so. Just like abortion and torture, it's a pretty hot topic. Ooh. Depending on who you ask.
Ooh.
Wow.
Gets people a little excited. As you can see how excited my friend Kevin Broberg is here. So let's talk about Jiffany Jamber. Jiffany Jamber, 8 hand size, 20 vitality, any old symbol you want.
So the first thing to note about Jiffany Jamber is that the rule on the infinity symbol is that when it enters play, you pick a symbol and you stick with it for the entire game. You don't change symbols, anything like that. It's just you say, "Here's my Jiffany Jamber deck. All of my cards have the all symbol." That's how it goes. Ben Shoemaker threw together a rough draft of a truly thrilling Jiffany Jamber deck on the Sunday afternoon chill out at Piglet's Cabin event, playing 88 miles per hour, flash attacks, roll, 4x high school crush, and trying to mill himself so that he could play 12 damage Heaven's Gates, and that was plan A, B, and C for the deck.
Was it any good?
It was probably like B tier, but it showed some promise. He was playing what, Crash Slam, I think, the 4 mid 4 punch that has flash because he couldn't find time stoppers. But it seemed to be doing some pretty exciting stuff, and he was really excited about it. So I can't take that away from him.
I saw on the Facebook earlier maybe it was last week, some heated exchanges between Jesse Cervini from the Total Justice Gaming Show and the evil warlord of the North, Garrett Brett the Manus. And
Grand Poobah, Garrett Brett.
And Garrett thinks that this character is going to break the game. Do you think the potential's there?
So, I think to elaborate on his position a little bit, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I talked to him a little bit over the weekend. Kind of the concern with Jiffany Jamber and the concern with 8 hand size in general is that you can play this really low risk, low low effort game where you just build and build and build and progress your staging area and block if they're stupid enough to attack you or whatever, and just shut down their offense by having a million cards in your hand at all times and having extremely consistent build cycles. And then eventually you're just ahead on cards so much that you figure out how to kill someone. Maybe Master Magnetism might help there. Maybe Silent Assassin might help there. Who knows how you're actually going to do it? But eventually you're just going to figure something out with all of these cards you have in your hand. And the all symbol actually is pretty kind of uniquely situated here because you have a couple ways to snowball your card advantage into even more cards with cards like the 12th Pharaoh, making a killing. And that was really the list of cards that really snowball.
There
you can become a 10 hand size character at the start of your turn. That's obscene, honestly.
The thing is why I don't really like Jiffany Jamber. I find her art to be in extremely poor taste. Don't like the art at all.
It's pretty lame. Yeah.
It's lame. It's a panty shot for no reason, other than UFS is full of sexist men, which we knew that. We did.
I mean, she's not showing cleavage. Like it could be worse, but yeah, it's a panty shot for no reason. I don't get it.
And the thing is why I'm not that concerned about her is we were talking about earlier in the show about how important your character is right now to building your deck. Now, Jiffany Jamber does have an ability printed on her that says, I have an 8 hand size.
Yep.
So that's a pretty powerful ability. But it doesn't feel like it's that easy to combine cards together that work super, super good with, I have an 8 hand size. Other than the fact that you have so many cards to work with.
You're not wrong, and I mean, whenever we talked about Jiffany Jamber over the weekend, I was asking, well, like, what do you do with her? Yeah, I know what she does, but what does she do? And I couldn't like theory craft a way that I felt really satisfied with, but I'm trying to remember if people gave me more ideas past just have 10 hand size, figure it out. I mean, she's certainly good at Trinity Geyser. She's certainly great at Shiranui no Mai. And actually, we were talking about the water symbol earlier. It turns out improved design gets even better when you have 8 cards to throw away before you have to start. Before you run out. So you can play 4 attacks and discard a card to all of them. And if the 4th attack is Shiranui no Mai, well, there's 4 more draws, 5 more attacks. That's an 11 damage Shiranui no Mai on its face. That's insane.
Right. I know. She seems unexciting, and I just can't figure out anything that I'd want to do with her. There's nothing that when you sit down and look at a character card and you're like, oh man, I want to do this.
Yeah, she just says, pick your favorite card in the format, and she's gonna play it like a rented mule. She's gonna exploit it unless it relies on your character before you can exploit it.
I mean, granted, I've got a bad habit of choosing bad B tier characters because I think their ability's cool. So that can affect my deck building. Just so everybody knows, I am playing the B tier character of Duo this weekend at the Empire Circuit. So we're going to remove all the cards from the game.
And we're also going to punch people in their low zone.
So, but there's just nothing exciting about her. Duo's exciting because you get to play a mill game. You get to block on any zone you want whenever you want, except for Master of Magnetism time. And, even other characters that I've played that even weren't that good, like Roy. Roy was exciting. He made my opponents miserable because all their stuff was tapped and I had a million cards in my hand. Jiffany just doesn't have anything that says, woo, come play me for me.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. That's how I like to build decks too, is to find something that's thrilling, something that I really like that excites me, and something where my cards can work together to be more than some of their parts. And Jiffany Jamber, she lets you do that, but she doesn't give you any guidance on how to do that. You have to just pick the best cards in the format and play them.
What do you think, Hughes?
We've brought up pretty much a lot of the points on her as is. I will bring up that when I was back just suggesting random character card ideas last year, trying to get playtests to say yes to one of them, just hypothetically, like I was saying them to you and Tim and whatnot, I said, so how about an 8-card hand size, 20 vitality, no abilities? And I got a very stern no.
I know that Garrett has said a few times that in his estimation, before you can be reasonably, before it feels fair, the number he had for Natan size no abilities was 15 life before your defensive capacity of building insanely well and then having blocks on whatever zone you want because you have so many cards in your hand at all times. You have so many choices on what you're going to play and what you're going to hold. He figured 15 life would be about fair.
Interesting. But I think that's all that's really to be said about Jiffany.
Yeah. It would have been nice if Bo had allowed her to be legal last weekend so someone could prove if she's actually broken or not. I'd rather not have us wait until...
But why would you want to take away the thunder from the Calgary moms invading?
Because I would like to have a point proven before it comes to Gen Con.
Oh, no, that's not how we do things here.
No, we wait for cards to win you cardboard and then we ban them.
Hey, we banned a whole lot of cards after Keith Disborough won, and none of his cards got banned, did they?
No, we just rotated them. All of them.
No, I mean, after Keith Disborough won...
I guess he still has Revoke.
I mean,
it wasn't... Like, we banned Complow and Paralyzing Touch right after that event, and those... I mean, it didn't rotate for a while.
Yeah, I think I won my champ card after his with a lot of the same cards he used to win his. I don't think anything got banned out of his deck.
I think that deck was... I think Angels were... I don't want to say fair, but because Omniol is pretty dumb. I don't know. I'm still conflicted about Angels.
Anyway,
I know
we're
Sonic
running low on time.
I see we're past the hour mark, so let's wrap it up, guys.
All right.
Any last words?
Last words at all?
I think I'm good.
Remember upcoming events. The next weekend we have the State Circuit stuff in Buffalo. Come say hi if you're a New York player and on the State Circuit. Followed by the July 11th Pro Tour in Rochester, New York. Is going to be an amazing time. Then Gen Con and finally the 2K coming up in November.
And if you want to watch this later, show it to your friends. This will be put up on YouTube later this evening. Like the Facebook page for Rochester CCG, or the Twitch page that we're streaming from now, so that way you can see more videos. I'll also be putting up, probably not till after Gen Con, but we'll be doing some pickup games and be streaming them of UFS. And probably some other video games, but that's for another day.
And then I think we'd like to play and do this again next week. Same time, same channel.
Same bad time, same bad channel.
And if you have any ideas of stuff you want to hear us talk about and ramble about for an hour, go ahead and shoot them. You can put them right on the Rochester CCG Facebook page. You can email them to the contact us on the website. And, we really appreciate everybody who put up with us tonight for our first night. Hopefully you guys found this useful or at least entertaining at the least. And we'll see you next week.
All right, this is Kevin Broberg signing off.
Night, folks.
Bye.